Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guests today are my two good friends, Scott Ritter and Diane Sare, and they're going to talk about the Ukraine drone strikes into Russia. So, Scott, why don't you get started? Let us know the background.
Well, apparently, this drone strike, which was carried out by under the auspices of the Ukrainian uh, Security Service, the SBU, it's been something that's been planned for a year and a half, and so we have to keep that in mind that this is something a capability Ukraine has been preparing for some time now. It's a rather daring and sophisticated operation that required the Ukrainians to procure a warehouse in the middle of Russia, outside of Chelyabinsk, which is a former closed city where Russia made nuclear weapons, um, and uh, and to procure trucks. And these trucks were converted into drone motherships, meaning that um, the truck beds were laid out so that there were drones on the bed. The roof could be opened up, remote control, and then the drones launched towards targets. And apparently, they targeted five different bases that are affiliated with Russia's strategic nuclear forces, in particular their Strategic Bomber Command. Um, you know, on the one hand, hats off to the Ukrainians. I mean, they pulled off something that is daring. There's just no other way to put it. Two, the hell with the Ukrainians. They just committed acts of international terrorism that put the United States and the world at risk by carrying out an attack against Russia's strategic nuclear deterrent force. They violated a number of red lines that exist in Russia's current nuclear doctrine that would doctrinally allow Russia to use nuclear weapons, not just against Ukraine, but against the United States and Great Britain. One of the factors of this 2024 statement is that if a non-nuclear state uses conventional power to strike Russia's strategic capabilities, and they're assisted in this by a nuclear power, then the nuclear power is to be held account and treated as a target. And there's no way that Ukraine carried this out without the assistance of at least the British and more than likely including the United States. The We don't know the total damage. The reports are coming in that appear that the Ukrainians may have destroyed upwards of six aircraft, damaged some others. Um, they're talking about 4% of the Russian strategic nuclear air assets were impacted by this attack. There's an old saying: if you're going to strike the king, kill the king. And by going after Russia's strategic nuclear deterrence, um, you know, take it out, but they didn't. It was a pinprick. And now what has happened is that the entire um, Ukraine has impacted this conflict to its detriment. They're not winning on the battlefield. They're getting slaughtered on the battlefield. It's getting worse for them on the battlefield. And what they've just done, based upon the statements made by Vladimir Putin right now as we speak, um, is they've destroyed any chance of diplomacy between Russia and a Ukraine governed by Zelensky. Zelensky's now been identified as a terrorist leader. Ukraine is a terrorist nation, and nations that continue to support Ukraine will be labeled as terrorist nations as well, and that includes the United States of America. Russia has made it clear that they will not negotiate with Zelensky, and they will not allow any ceasefire, that they're going to continue this conflict until it reaches its natural progression. Um, but that's where we're at. I mean, a daring stroke, but a suicidal stroke. I mean, go hand out medals to the SBU people who planned this, and then they'll be captured by the Russians and charged with terrorism and given the appropriate sentence, because they will not. I'll just make this statement as clear as possible. They will not finish their life normally. Everybody involved in this operation will find that their life is terminated one way or the other by the Russians, who will never forgive and will never forget what was done.
Now, Diane, when I had talked to you initially, you had said that this was done without Donald Trump's knowledge. Am I correct?
Well, I said that's what has been said, and I suspect that that is the case. I mean, he said it was the case. His press secretary, Caroline Levitt, said yesterday, at least, that Ukraine had not informed him they were planning to do this.
So, if as the commander in chief, he didn't know this. If that's the case, why have elections? I mean, if he's going to be kept in the dark about something so catastrophic, what's the point?
Well, we would hope we would have fair elections so that people's opinions on matters, including their hatred of the policies of certain politicians, could be registered and changed. But I think we've had a long going problem, really, frankly, back to the death of Franklin Roosevelt, the McCarthyite witch hunts, where our intelligence agencies have taken over running the entire political show. And the Kennedy assassination being a case in point, we have sort of rogue operations. And I think Tulsi Gabbard has a huge, challenging job to do. And I'm not sure if she has enough backup to be able to pull off. I mean, think about this. We had James Comey, the former head of the FBI, just post an assassination threat to the President of the United States. She said correctly that he should be in jail as someone who apparently had recently threatened her, and we don't hear anything more about it. So, I think that's this mess has got to be cleaned up. I think one of the reasons why people voted for Trump, with the combination of Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and Patel, is that the American people actually wish that we had control over what our political leadership does.
Scott, Trump was saying right before he assumed office that he would stop the war on day one. That was all bluster, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is 99% bluster, and 0.01% bullshit. And that's the reality. This man, he's a moral, intellectual coward. There's no principle in him other than what's best for Donald Trump, and what's best for Donald Trump is not what's best for America. He allows his mouth to run away, and then he doesn't have the courage of conviction to back up what he says. He could never have ended this war on day one, but he could have ended this war on week one, literally by picking up the phone and telling Zelensky it's over, finished,
Mm-hmm.
surrender. And then when the Europeans squeak, shut them down. Send your Secretary of State over to Europe and says one more word, and we will hit you with 500% sanctions, tariffs, and we will withdraw from NATO, and you will rot. We don't care. We're not going to let you dictate the national security of the United States anymore. You have no influence on us. None. Not on
So,
this issue. And it could have happened. It could have happened at any moment. He could tell the Senate the same thing. I'm the president of the United States. This is the national security priority that I've given. I want to bring it into this conflict. But he didn't do that because he doesn't have courage. Instead, what he does is he opens his big mouth, he makes pronouncements, and then he turns it over to a dysfunctional staff that's at war with itself. He has a Secretary of State who hates him, who wants to be president himself, and who views his tenure as Secretary of State as a stepping stone block to being president. He's not here to carry out Donald Trump's will. He's here to make Marco Rubio look good. He has a Secretary of the Treasury who is as dumb as the day is long about Russia and the economic realities surrounding Russia, who believes that we can sanction Russia to death and wants to sanction Russia to death. He had a national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who was a neocon to the heart, who hated Russia. He has a special envoy for Ukraine who's been advising him throughout his campaign, Keith Kellogg, who hates Russia, all things Russia. Yes, he can counter that with J.D. Vance, who appears to want to embrace a policy similar in nature to what Trump is pursuing. But Vance doesn't know anything about Russia. He has Tulsi Gabbard, a very intelligent person, well-meaning, but she doesn't know anything about Russia, and it appears that she's unable to control a rogue intelligence community. He has Steve Witkoff, who is not an expert of Russia, but at least wants to implement what Donald Trump says he wants to accomplish. But then Witkoff is undercut continuously by Marco Rubio and Keith Kellogg and others who are allowed to articulate policies that contradict the direction that Donald Trump says he wants to go. And Donald Trump just stands there, sits there, and says nothing. He's not a leader. He's not a leader of men. He's not a leader of women. He's not a leader of anybody. He's an indecisive, moral, and intellectual coward. Right now, he's coming to an inflection point. Vladimir Putin, who is not a moral or intellectual coward, has just put the markers on the table, defining the future. And now Donald Trump has a choice. Does he want peace? Or is he going to punt to the neoconservatives who he said he opposed? I mean, here's Donald Trump giving statements. He gave a speech where he said, we will not allow these regime change people, these people who assault democracy, to go out there and carry out these policies to get us involved in wars. But Ukraine is nothing but one of these regime change operations orchestrated by the United States designed to get us into a war. It fits exactly what he said he will never allow to happen. And now it's going to happen because he doesn't have the courage to stand up against the people who are doing it. A moral and intellectual coward. This is his come to Jesus moment. And I unfortunately don't think that he's going to be up to the task.
When he was picking the people that surrounds him, the cabinet and so forth, didn't he have anybody with enough brains to tell him, no, don't pick this person, pick that? I mean, it sounds as if what you're saying, he appointed willy-nilly.
I wouldn't say he appointed willy-nilly. I would say that it's a sign of Donald Trump's incompetence. Donald Trump believes that
something? Because I agree, it is, and I think he's very shallow, and we see it. But we also have so few competent, decent people. I mean, if you're looking at Capitol Hill or you're looking at New York real estate milieu, I mean, you would have to go to people who are doing all these podcasts, like Scott, like Ray McGovern, like Kirk Wiebe. The VIPs, the veteran intelligence. There's people like that. But if you're in this milieu, I mean, frankly, I'm somewhat flabbergasted, even though I knew the Congress was bad, having run for office. But if that's the array of people that you think you have to choose from for a cabinet, this is horrible. Look at the U.S. Senate. 82 senators are on this Graham Blumenthal crazy attack Russia bill. It is sort of a dark age. I hate to say that, but I do think it is. We're not suffering from too many brilliant statesmen running around the country.
Scott, you had mentioned a number of times how close we are to doomsday. Where's the doomsday? Where's the doomsday clock right now?
0.
So total annihilation can come at any time.
Yeah, come today, come tonight, come tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to stop it. I mean, we are literally hostage to the maximum restraint of Russia. We've already crossed Russia's red lines. We've already crossed them.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just simply Russia saying, well, we believe that we can still accomplish our tasks without resorting to this. But if Trump says it takes umbrage at Putin standing up to him and dares do something stupid, how will this turn out? We're at 0. There is nothing stopping a nuclear war right now other than the common sense of the Russians. And as an American, while I love the Russians and respect the Russians, I don't want to be held hostage by the common sense of Russia, because Russia looks out for Russian interests, not American interests. And at some point in time, the Russians will make a calculation that will be to the detriment of the United States of America. I'd prefer to have a commander in chief who cares about the American people, about our future, and wants us all to have a thriving, future able to pass on, our legacy to our children and grandchildren. But that's not this president. He doesn't care about anything but Donald Trump. And God forbid Vladimir Putin rub him the wrong way and Trump says something stupid. We've already crossed Russia's red lines. We've already done it. How much do you really think that we would stand here idly if the Mexican cartels carried out an attack on America's strategic nuclear forces, put trucks loaded with drones outside of Whitman Air Force Base, took out our B-2 bombers, went up to Minot, North Dakota, took out our B-52 bombers, went to Barksdale, took out our B-52 bombers, and then we found out that the North Koreans and the Chinese did it? We're not going to sit here and simply say, oh, it's just the cartel. No, the cartel has now been used as a tool of our opponents who have nuclear weapons to destroy a critical part of our nuclear deterrent capability and our nuclear response capability to weaken us in what? For what reason? And you have to assume it's because they're going to launch a preemptive nuclear strike, which means now you have to respond accordingly and preempt their preemption, and it's all over. That's how we would respond. Thank God the Russians have restraint. But if you think for a second that they don't have people telling Vladimir Putin, hey, boss, that was a dress rehearsal. That was a dress rehearsal. Next time they're going to come after everything. We have, the Russians have their strategic, their mobile missiles. I've been to the bases. They're out in the middle of nowhere, but they have shelters. But you hit those shelters while the missiles are in the shelter with FPV drones. You can punch a hole in it, put another one through there, take the missile out. And if you do a coordinated attack, yes, there's a certain percentage of Russia's missiles that are deployed in the field. But you could take out the vast majority of their missiles using an attack like this. Submarines that are in port, you could hit those things. You could disrupt the operations of the silo-based missiles. You can hit command and control, hit the communications, take it all out. Man, if I were a Russian strategic planner, I'd be saying, boss, the next time this happens, we can't just wait and say, oh, it's just the Ukrainians again. Given the hostility that's been shown by the British, the French, where the French have already said they're ready to have a nuclear war with Russia, the United States, who's saying nothing, but has negotiated arms control treaties for the sole benefit of the United States. If I were a Russian, I'd say we have to treat the next such attack as a potential precursor for a larger attack, and we need to be more robust in our response. There's no time on the clock, Cynthia. The clock has hit zero, and we're just waiting for the nuclear war to start. That's how dangerous this is.
Now, excuse me 1 second. Back, I think it was in December, when you said at that point, a nuclear war was averted because people spoke to Biden and told him, stop this baloney. And he stopped it. Are we in the same spot now than we were back then?
Well, I'll say real quick. First of all, people spoke to Biden in September and stopped it. Biden went ahead and crossed the lines in November and December, and they were actually ready to have a nuclear war. Again, I just want to remind the American people, the Biden administration was ready to have what they called a nuclear exchange with Russia. They had made that decision. They were ready for that. The clock hit zero back in December. What saved us was Donald Trump coming out in a Time magazine interview, I believe, where he said, I will not continue the policies that Biden just did, which crossed the red lines of Russia's nuclear doctrine, basically giving a green light to long-range ATACMS missiles striking deep inside Russia. Russia said that will trigger nuclear response. Trump came out and said he won't continue that policy, and the Russians wisely said, okay, we'll ride out Biden and give Trump a chance. Well, here we are. This is Trump's moment. He has to distance himself for what Zelensky did. My understanding is that Mertz is coming in, or Yermak today apparently told Trump, yeah, we're going to keep doing it. And if the Germans gave us missiles, the report indicated the Germans had given them missiles, but whatever, we're going to use those too. That's a nuclear war right there. So Yermak just said, screw you, Trump. We're going to do whatever it takes, even if it brings it to a nuclear war. Now, the appropriate response is for Trump to arrest him, take him out in the front, and execute him in front of the world and say, that's what you get for threatening the United States of America. You don't get to do that. That was a direct threat to the United States of America that Yermak, the presidential advisor to Zelensky, made to Donald Trump today. And the moral intellectual coward let him get away with it instead of kicking him in the balls, putting him on the ground, stomping his face and dragging his corpse out and hanging it up for America to see. You don't get to threaten America, especially when you're a Banderas scum who was installed by the CIA. Remember, your job is to do what we tell you to do. And right now the game is up, and your job is to surrender. That's what Trump should be telling him, but he didn't because he's a coward. Yermak just threatened him. Mertz is coming in next week. What's Trump going to tell Mertz? Well, it's okay for Germany to give weapons to an insane Ukraine that's going to get us involved in a nuclear war. Or is he going to bitch slap Mertz in front of the world? He won't, because he's a moral and intellectual coward. We're dealing with a man who isn't what the American people thought they were voting for. Okay, this is a man who was blood. We all knew that he was an orange-faced madman who would do things, but we thought that he had some spine. We thought that he was the guy that was going to lead the revolution. Charge, take it all down, take down the deep state, let the chips fall where they might. Turns out he's just a coward who only cares about Donald Trump. That's it. It's all he cares about. Everything he does is to advance the individual personal interests of Donald Trump, his family, and his immediate associates. Nothing he does is for the American people. In fact, I can make an argument that everything he has done has been to the detriment of the American people. Everything he said that he was going to do has turned out to be a lie. Straight up, look, I mean, I don't want to get too far up. Tariffs. This whole tariff policy is destroying the American economy. But I'm sure his guys are out there shorting the economy, hedging their bets and making tons of money. He's getting a $400 million gift from the, from Gutter. This is the single most corrupt person imaginable. And again, I could tolerate the corruption if that's what it took to get a man or a person in the White House who had the courage to say, full steam ahead. Damn the torpedoes. We're just doing it, baby. We're going to get this thing done. Come hell or high water. Graham and Blumenthal went to Ukraine and carried out an act of sedition, a literal act of sedition. They went and negotiated with a foreign government as if they were the U.S. government. That's a violation of the Logan Act. Hey, it's about time we started arresting people and seeing if that, fly that constitutional flag up. But it doesn't matter if the Supreme Court says, well, the Logan Act is, we're not saying that it's constitutional. They committed sedition. They conspired with a foreign power to undermine the national security policy of the president of the United States. That is sedition. They need to be stripped of their security clearances, arrested, and charged with sedition. And those 82 senators need to be told, if you conspired with them, if we find any evidence of phone calls where you were knowledgeable of this, you are now part of a conspiracy, and you shall be stripped of your security clearances, and you shall be arrested. This is a coup that's taking place right now in the United States Senate by the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the deep state working together to conspire against the sitting president of the United States. Yes, I understand that we have separate but equal branches of government, but you don't get to commit treason. And Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal committed treason, committed sedition. They flew to Ukraine on a very expensive budget, by the way, with Graham approved because he gets to approve it. But they went there and they conspired against the president for 30 days. Then they came back here praying that their conspiracy worked. Well, you know what? Vladimir Putin, he's smarter than they are. Knew exactly what they were up to. Because the whole idea was to get the Russians to retaliate or first of all, not to go to Istanbul and say, we don't negotiate with terrorists, or to retaliate in such a manner that Ukraine said, we can't negotiate with these madmen. Look what they've done to us. Russia just shut up and sent their delegation and did the work, put the ball in Trump's court. Now Trump has to sit there and go, what do I do with this? I don't know what to do. The Russians are still doing diplomacy. And Graham's like, fail so we can sanction, because Trump's like, I don't know what to do when the Senate comes to me. I can't say no to the Senate. Well, he needs to. He needs not just to say no to the Senate. He literally needs to arrest Lindsey Graham and Richard Blue, strip them of their security clearances. They don't deserve it. They conspired against this president. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do anything like that. Instead, he's going to yield to the Senate. They're going to pass this stupid sanctions bill, and that'll be the end of any chance for peace between Russia and the United States. Any chance, because Cynthia, Russia will not negotiate with a gun to their head.
Diane?
I want to go back a bit, because one, the the elephant in the room, so to speak, or part of this, the elephant in the room is actually nuclear war, which is the end of everything. But the financial system is going to blow. And part of the reason for these operations is for the media to be able to have a narrative that, oh, you see, Ukraine actually could win the war. Russia is weak. Look how the New York Times covered this, flipping the script. Now, of the 5 bases, 3 repelled these attacks altogether. The Ukrainians did not destroy 41 aircraft or however many they said. Even the disgusting New York Times said, well, we can only confirm less than a dozen. They won't say how few planes were destroyed. Yesterday, maybe you saw there was an attack again on the Kerch Bridge. Totally, it failed. They tried an underwater drone to hit the supports of the bridge. It's so reinforced because Putin knew they would do this that failed. They tried 2 other things. The Ukrainians are crowing, putting out propaganda. We did immense structural damage. Didn't happen. Why do they need the narrative? The EU just is talking about 800 billion euros for weapons. They can't even produce that. The US can barely produce that, but we have a gigantic bubble of derivatives obligations that has to be fed. What's feeding it is this war machine, and therefore they are desperate to maintain a narrative that Russia is not winning the war, that this was a huge surprise, that Russia can be defeated, and that is so absolutely not the case. And on this, I think this also gets at the matter of the kill list, which Scott and I and other people are on, because for the West, so much of the war is not kinetic, it's quote unquote information. That you cannot have voices who say, get out a map and look at the thing. Ukraine is not winning the war. You cannot have anyone who threatens to puncture the narrative. They have to be eliminated. So it's also massive psychological warfare. And when John Brennan went over from being the head of the CIA to a news anchor at MSNBC, then Americans should be very clear. We do not have news media. We have a massive, what do you call it, psyops or something or other in the military. That is what is going on against the American people as well, to further confuse and make a mess of things and get it so that these stupid senators can say, oh yeah, we're bringing Russia to its knees. And of course, so many people don't have a clue of we're the ones being destroyed, being brought to our knees. They're doing fine. The more we sanction them, the better their economy gets. You see it with China as well. But I just wanted to bring that element in because this propaganda about Russia losing, Russia being destroyed, the Ukraine's really pulled off a big whatever is part of the operation.
So, Diane, does Baxter have anything to say about this?
Baxter is very disturbed by all of this, and he's certainly a fan of President Putin and Putin's approach to things.
So, Scott, final words?
I mean, now's the time for the American people to do something. I mean, here's I'm in the middle of making a documentary film called 38 Minutes. 38 Minutes makes reference to the period of time on January 13th, 2018, in the island of Hawaii between 8:08 in the morning when the citizens of Hawaii all received an alert that said, alert, a ballistic missile is inbound to your location. Seek shelter. This is not a drill. And for 38 minutes, the people of Hawaii thought they were going to die. I mean, many of them were making final phone calls to their loved ones, frantically looking for their children. Jim Carrey, the actor and comedian, was in Maui. He received a phone call from his producer. She said, we got 10 minutes to live. And she said, do you want to get in the car and meet? He said, I'm not going to die in a car. And he went to the beach and he reconciled himself to death, literally. Got in that stage where he was going to die. Many people did that. And the purpose of the movie is to try and put the average American into that situation. I want them to feel the panic. I want them to feel the desperation, because every American should feel that right now. You're going to die. Literally. I don't know how many times Scott, we don't believe you until it happens, until you get that message on your phone that says the missile is inbound. At that point in time, you go, damn, I should have had a V8. No, you should have done something. So, what I come up with there, and the thing I asked through the movie, and I'm asking the American people now. So you got that text alert. You're going to die. There's no stop. You can't stop the missile. Our missile defense doesn't work. You're going to die. Now, if you could magically go back in time 6 months, knowing that this event's going to happen, unless something changes, what would you be willing to do to stop that missile from flying, to save your life, to save the lives of the people you love? What would you be willing to do? And now I'm going to ask you, why aren't you doing it now? Why aren't you doing it now? Cynthia, this is it. I don't want to hear anything from anybody else. I don't give a flying you-know-what about what anybody else says. You're going to die. You are all going to die. And I'm not talking about natural deaths. I'm talking about the kind of deaths where either you're taking it calmly like Jim Carrey, sitting out waiting for the two suns in the sunset, or you're yelling and screaming in desperation. But you're going to die in a nuclear holocaust unless you do something to stop it. What are you willing to do to save your life? That's the only question that's viable anymore. What are you willing to do? And the answer for most Americans is not a damn thing. So you're going to get what you're going to get.
Let me ask you this question. You and I have been talking for a while. You, Diane and I, and you have been talking for a while. But there's only not many people who have the courage to stand up and say what you say. They go by what they're hearing on the mainstream media. Okay, so if the mainstream media is not saying what you're saying, how do you change their minds? I mean, you say, you're gonna die, but that's just a phrase. They taken what they hear on the mainstream media. How do you change that mindset?
If you watch the mainstream media, I'm not going to change your mindset. I don't give a flying F about you. You're stupider than shit, and you deserve what you get. The bottom line, though, is that alternative media is beating mainstream media. Again, I'm not going to take full credit for this, but I will tell you what, Operation Dawn last year stopped a frickin' nuclear war. All right? You're alive because of what we did, what you did, Cynthia, what Diane did, what I did, what other people did, because we did make a difference. First of all, through Operation Dawn, we, the alternative media, got on Trump's radar. We, the alternative media, got access to people inside Trump's inner circle. We, the alternative media, got Trump to make a public statement that he didn't want World War III, that he was against nuclear war, and that he was going to change the policy on Ukraine. We got that to happen, and the Russians listened. And when the Russians listen, when they talk about maximum restraint, one of the reasons why there exists maximum restraint is because the Russians look at the United States and say, there are voices out there that actually have a chance to have an impact on policy who are saying something different than the insanity of the Biden administration. We'll give them a shot instead of nuking them. That's how we avoided war in September. Then we went and had a big deal at the National Press Club after Trump became president, and we lobbied Congress about stopping the insanity of giving a green light to let ATACMS missiles go against Ukraine. And Trump changed the policy. He said, when I'm president, that won't be the policy. And the Russians looked, and maximum restraint came because they went sanity, insanity. We vote for sanity. We'll give them a chance. So, Cynthia, I'm not going to say the word, but we kicked ass. All right? So all you lazy ass people who sat on your asses and did nothing, thank us, because we did the hard work. But now I'm telling you, we got to do it again. We got to do it again. And we need people to get up to work. And if you say, well, I don't know what to do, then give me fucking money and I'll do something. All right? If you say, I don't know what to do, give me money. I know what to do. I'll make it happen. Diane will make it happen. Cynthia will make it happen. Give the people who have the courage of their conviction to do something the money to accomplish the mission. But don't just sit there and have a fucking cup of coffee and say, I don't know what to do. Take that money that you would have just spent on the coffee and subscribe. Subscribe to Cynthia's channel. donate it to Diane. Subscribe to some of the work I'm doing. We take that money and we turn it into action. We already saved your lives once. And even though I don't have too much use for most of you, I'll save your life again because I want to live. I want my children to live. But don't tell me you don't know what to do, because there are people who do know what to do, who have done it, who have saved your lives, and were willing to do it again. But I'm telling you right now, when I asked what you'd be willing to do to stop that missile from flying, I know what I want to do, and I'm doing it. I'm doing it to make sure that the missiles don't fly, but there's no guaranteed outcome. But I do know this, that when the missiles do fly, if they do fly, at least I'll be able to say, I gave it a shot. I did everything I could possibly do to stop this, as opposed to sitting back going, damn, wish I'd done more. Because when the missiles are coming in, wishing you could have done more, it ain't going to get you nowhere. Do everything now. Now's the moment. Now's the time. This is the moment. This is the decisive moment. And if you're doing nothing, you're the problem, not the solution.
Diane, final thoughts?
Well, I think Scott's right. We got to get through to people. I will say, slightly more hopeful, they are waking up. I got an email out of the blue yesterday from a radio guy who interviewed me the first time I ran for Congress in 2012 when Obama was president. And he said, could you please send me the signs you were putting up at that time? They seemed really way out there, but it was something about Obama and nuclear war. And I found this sign that said, Obama is funding Nazis in Ukraine. Impeach Obama, stop World War III. And I emailed it to the guy and he goes, yeah, that's the one. So how many years later? The point is, we don't have that time now, but I think frankly, I think Trump got elected because so many people wanted to end this war. But part of the problem of the stupid mainstream press is people don't dare to say what they actually think, which is why it's so important that you have people like yourself, Scott, myself, others who do tell the truth, because by us doing that, the ones who know that we're right but don't dare to say it find the courage to come forward. I just think that people don't recognize that we don't have time. And we didn't mention today the message that Medvedev posted, I think partly because the Russian people are so angry and want action right away. And he said, look, it's natural to worry, but don't worry. We will blow up the sites that need to be blown up. We will eliminate the people that need to be eliminated. The negotiations in Istanbul are not a compromise with the Nazi regime, but that we are going to see this through for our objectives, which Putin he has never once changed his objectives. The denazification of Ukraine, they can't have nuclear weapons, they can't join NATO, and now you have the 4 oblasts plus Crimea, which are part of the Russian Federation. The Russians have been very transparent and consistent, so people just have to wake up fast and move, and this can be averted, but it actually, I'm afraid, all hangs on the United States and this president, and I have a big question mark whether we're going to get this administration to actually say what's required. We're going to have to really mobilize.
So, Scott and Diane, I'm sure that this conversation will be continued. So
Maybe.
I know, I was going to say, I hope so.
So you've been listening to Scott Ritter and Diane Sare. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you, and have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Diane. You have a great day also.
Thanks.